It was one of those evenings when London seemed to drown under its own rain. The streets shimmered in fractured reflections of traffic lights, the air carrying the smell of wet asphalt and exhaust. People huddled under umbrellas, weaving through puddles as buses rolled in and out of the stops like tired giants. On the number 8 bus, the air was heavy, warm from body heat, thick with the mingled scents of damp coats and cheap cologne. The windows were fogged over, streaked with the occasional trickle of condensation. Everyone seemed locked in their own bubble earphones in, eyes on phones, or simply staring blankly at the blurred scenery outside. Aisha Khan sat in the middle row, near the window. 34 years old, dressed in a beige coat and navy hijab pinned neatly under her chin. She looked tired, but composed. Beside her feet sat 2 grocery bags, filled with bread, tea, and vegetables, things she had picked up for her elderly mother before heading home. She tried not to meet anyone's eyes. Years in the city had taught her that sometimes the safest way to travel was invisibility. The bus slowed with a groan, and the hiss of the opening doors was followed by a rush of cold, wet air. A man stepped on, shaking rain from his hair. He was in his early 40s, tall but lean, his greasy blonde hair plastered to his forehead. His brown leather jacket looked worn and unwashed, and his eyes had the restless, darting movement of someone constantly looking for trouble. As he scanned the bus, his gaze landed on Aisha. It didn't move away. He made his way down the aisle with slow, deliberate steps. The sound of his boots thudding against the floor seemed louder than it should have been. He stopped beside her seat, leaning slightly so his shadow fell over her. "What's that thing on your head?" His voice was loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. The tone wasn't curiosity, it was mockery. Aisha kept her voice steady. "It's my hijab," he smirked, leaning closer. "Hijab, huh? You think you're better than us? Or maybe you're hiding something under there?" She turned her gaze to the window, willing herself to disappear. But then, without warning, his hand shot out and grabbed the edge of her hijab. He yanked hard. The pins snapped loose. The scarf slipped from her head, falling halfway into his grip. Gasps broke the silence, but no one moved. "Stop!" Aisha said sharply, clutching at the scarf, her hands trembling. The man dangled it between his fingers. "Oh, look at that! Not so special anymore, are you?" Then, in a crude, exaggerated imitation of her accent, he sneered, "Please, sir, don't do this." A young man near the front shifted uncomfortably. A middle-aged woman looked down at her lap. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, then looked away. The bus was a room full of witnesses pretending blindness. Aisha's cheeks burned. Her chest felt tight not just from fear, but from the crushing humiliation of being degraded while others looked away. The man stepped even closer, looming over her. "You people come here and—" A voice interrupted, low and controlled, but carrying enough force to slice through the tension like a blade. "Pick on someone who can hit back." Heads turned. 3 rows back, Jason Statham stood up. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and dark jeans, rain still clinging to his shoulders. His eyes were locked on the man, his posture calm but radiating danger. The man's smirk faltered. "This ain't your business." Jason began moving down the aisle, slow and deliberate, each step echoing on the bus floor. "It became my business the second you touched her." The man straightened, trying to puff himself up. "Yeah? And what if I—" The words never finished. Jason's fist shot out in a clean, sharp right cross that cracked against the man's jaw with a solid thud. The attacker's head snapped sideways, his body stumbling into the nearest pole. Before he could recover, Jason's left hand gripped the front of his leather jacket, yanking him upright. A second punch, this time, into the gut, drove the air from the man's lungs. He doubled over, coughing, clutching his stomach. Jason leaned in close, his voice a low growl only the man could hear. "That's what it feels like when someone hits back." Jason released him, and the man staggered toward the door. At the next stop, the driver opened it without being asked. The attacker stumbled out into the rain, disappearing into the night. The bus stayed silent. Jason turned to Aisha, crouching slightly so his gaze met hers. "You okay?" She nodded, still shaken, her hands quickly repinning her hijab. "Thank you. No one." Her voice caught. "You don't owe them silence," Jason said firmly. "You have every right to be here, to be you." For a long moment, She just looked at him. "You remind people we're not invisible," she said softly. Jason gave the faintest smile. "And you remind people that strength doesn't always need fists, but sometimes it does." When she stepped off the bus a few stops later, her posture was straighter, her chin lifted just a little higher. Inside, the silence remained. But it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of people who had seen courage up close and knew they'd remember it. And maybe next time, they wouldn't look away.